welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is licensed art therapist, counselor, and my friend, Christlyn McCaskill. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So we've known each other for a few years, but over the last few years, you've excelled and gone further in your career path. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about your work within the arts community and ultimately, why did I reach out to you?
So you kind of reached out to me after you saw that I was guest teaching for like painting, actually specifically for an arts organization on Instagram. And he's like, oh, I should invite you. And then I was like, okay. And you're like, yeah, let's do this. And then I got the invite. So here I am.
So let's talk about your work then. Let's get into the details. So what is some of your work? Describe like what you did, why you chose to go into this arts therapy field, because I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, well, I studied art in school. So my bachelor's is from Goucher, and I got it in like studio art. So there was a lot of painting and drawing. And my main medium was always pencil, graphite, charcoal, and then a lot of portrait work.
Sure.
But before I even went back to school, I was in the military for a while, and, I kind of just got interested in art therapy because I was like really just kind of impressed with the ability for like art to help people process trauma. And then, I had friends in the military that had been deployed, and just like had the stresses of military life. And that's kind of where my interest came from.
Sure.
And then when I was looking at schools, like one of the things that GW kind of talked about, which is the school where I got my master's from, is, art therapy is a profession born on the battlefield, and just how they use it to help treat, shell shock is what they called it back then, but it's now PTSD. And it was kind of just like combining, my love of like being in the military, and so working with service members and like art. So then I'm like, oh, this is a field. This is what I need to do. This is what I want to do. Uh-huh. And I went through that 2-year master program. I did, internships and kind of just learned like, how do you use art therapeutically and like all the different realms, like, diagnosis, treatment, even teaching people how to, cope with different things that come up in their life. It's just been really amazing. So here I am, like, an art therapist and a counselor.
Well, that's great. Like, especially how this year has gone for some people. I've been describing, like, as we're recording this is National Cookie Day. And I was like, yo, this year's been sour. So cookies are sweet. Do that, and that'll make it feel better. And it's about this thing of just life is hard as it is. But when you have something like what this year has been, this dumpster fire of a year, you want to do different things. So I know for my degree of using, and maybe it's wrong, so correct me, but using art for therapy, I have like those books, like those coloring books that have like these. I gave a bunch of them because I know a lot of people who will talk about, man, it's a rough time for me. And I'm like, here, take one of these, or here's a printout.
Yeah.
And I'll do that. And I have that like in my home, and being a person that really admires art and just being a person that's also aware of some of the challenges people have emotionally. I definitely think what you're doing is cool, and that you chose to do that as a career pursuit.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's not exactly art therapy, like the coloring pages,
sure.
But that does kind of just fall in the lines of like, that's like a coping skill, or like that's like a therapeutic modality. The thing about art therapy is that it's very intentional, and like the different interventions that we use is targeted to help the client or the individual kind of just work through identified issues that they, have come in and say, okay, like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I want to work on. Yeah, I know people always think like, oh, like you just work with kids and you just color, but it's a lot more intentional than that. And then, my clientele ranges in age, actually. I have more adults than I have children.
So actually, that was a backdoor segue into my next question. How would you, and be as general as you can, because I know you're going to be, how can you what's your approach when you're tailoring your art therapy session to meet your patient's needs or your client's needs?
I'm a firm believer in meeting people where they are. You can study, the different diagnoses, but they're going to manifest and they're going to look different on each person based on their age, their gender, their race, and then also how they were raised. Especially just given how even in the Black community, mental health is still pretty taboo. I know we saying it's come a long way, but it's still, it's very taboo. And there's a lot to be done in kind of navigating that. But when, clients come in, it's kind of, they're coming in with what they've been through in life. They're coming in with where they are now.
Sure.
And then it's really once I get to know my client, then we kind of work through it that way. You kind of just have to establish a therapeutic relationship. And then based on that, you find out where they are willing to go, where they are ready to go. Just because someone comes to therapy doesn't mean that they're ready to necessarily dive in to what they're saying they're coming in for. So it's a process. And it's something that actually I really enjoy it. People talk about you're always working. Well, I love what I do. So it doesn't really feel like work. I kind of just looked up I worked all day.
You found the missing link. People thrive for that. It's can I get this? Can I get this balance where I don't think that I'm working? I just enjoy it. I'm there. I'm putting in the hours. And it is a few different approaches when you're super busy to the degree that you don't know how many hours you've worked. Mm-hmm. You could just be super busy. Or if you've enjoyed it so much, oh, wow, it's 6 o'clock. I'm done here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's good. You touched on a bit your creative background outside of the therapeutic space. Mm-hmm. So could you describe some of your other creative interests and maybe combine that back to how do you draw from those interests when working with your clients?
Yeah. So I know I said before, I initially was very heavy into pencil and charcoal and also pastels. But my most recent ventures are more so watercolor based. And this actually was just born out of my time in the program. So one of the things in the program is we learn how to do these different interventions and how to apply theory and things like that. But we also use art to better understand it for ourselves. And we also, do these different interventions so that we also can kind of understand what this might be for a client. Right. You don't want to implement something and you don't even have the slightest idea of what could possibly be going on or how your client could be experiencing it. And due to that, one of the things is I just started doing a lot of watercolor. And that's mostly what I've been doing lately, unless, someone has asked for something specifically like a pencil drawing or they specifically asked for acrylic painting. But when I was in high school, my art teacher, who I love dearly, she had us do this watercolor and glue project. Where you draw with glue and then you paint in watercolor and then you have this multimedia thing. And I've kind of just adapted that approach. I don't use the glue often, but I've just adapted that approach. And I think also I was just using that as a way to kind of process me losing her. She passed away actually a few years ago. So not too long ago. Right. And I actually just used that specific modality to kind of just deal with her being gone because she was at my undergrad graduation in 2017. She was at my art show for when I graduated in 2017. And we've stayed in contact since I graduated in 2009, and she's a mentor. She's my favorite teacher.
Yeah.
One of the best gifts I got from my high school. So I think that's also like the therapeutic part. Yeah. Is that you use art to navigate these really difficult situations. And we can say, like, I was grieving. I was, even though she passed away a few years ago, just the reality is, I was going through this program, and she's the one that she actually kind of inspired me to go in that route. After being out of school for so long, doing my time in the military. So, I think, when I think about that and how do I implement it with clients, I often encourage them to kind of pull from things that they know that work. Because the thing is like having consistency and things that are like reliable or that work for you are really great kind of transitional points into start working on things that you want to work on. I was experiencing like this loss and this grief, and I loved watercolor. It brought me, like, using it always makes me think about her, because she's the one that taught me how to use it. She's the one that introduced me to it. So like I have these really fond memories attached to this experience. And that's helpful. So, and the same thing, if a client might tell me, if I say, hey, we talk about coping skills. Well, one of the things I do is I teach my clients how to crochet if they want to, and a lot of people have really fond memories. Oh, my grandmother used to do that. Or, like that's just an example.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just try to pull from things that people are familiar with. And then it makes it a little bit easier to transition into new things.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think if one is looking at you're learning these new skills or relearning these skills or taking from, it's easier entry point to go into that from like some degree of common knowledge. Yes. Like when I try to learn anything, I remember going through, I was in like therapy for 3 years, and my therapist was a nerd. I'm a nerd. And he was just like, so in feudal Japan, I was like, you've got me. What are we doing? And he would just go down this long thing. He's like, so in Star Trek. I was like, all right, what are we doing? And it was easier to kind of process these things that I think if presented in a kind of cookie cutter sort of way, not in a specific to your client sort of way, it can easily just get missed. That's not for me. I don't understand that. I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. So being able to present it the way that, at least the way I think that I heard that you were describing it, to where your person is at and what they may know, and kind of just something that just clicks for them, that's dope. So Baltimore. Yes. So how's it been practicing in Baltimore, or practicing in this area?
Actually, it has been the most overwhelming, exciting, most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced. And I know that really sounds like really conflicting, right? But when I was looking at employment, post-graduation, I really thought about, what do I want to do? Like, what's important to me? Where do I want to be? How do I want to serve? I mean, because it is a service profession. It's the helping profession. Yes. And initially, like I know I said, like, I kind of got into this, really just based off me being in the military. And I initially wanted to work with veterans, with PTSD specifically. And not to say like that's not something that I want to do in the future, but I kind of just looked at, okay, like, you know what, a lot of people want to work with veterans. Like veterans receive, a good amount of services. Okay, like where can I go, or what can I do for a population that is like, that's underserved? And not to say that the veterans aren't underserved, because they are, but I was thinking about, okay, you know what? I'm from Baltimore, and I actually had an assignment for my career development class that I was taking over the summer, everything was going on with Black Lives Matter, and things like that. And I remember just kind of, one of the questions was just like, well, what is your ideal art therapy job? If you could make one, like, what would you be doing, and how would you be doing, and where? And I kind of reflected on like Trump's comment about Baltimore being a rat-infested city.
Get it.
And I think I actually quoted it in my paper, and I kind of went on this like kind of tangent in the paper, but essentially like when I like look back at it, like, okay, well, this is what I need to do. So I was very intentional about choosing practice. So I am in private practice, but I was intentional about choosing a practice that was serving the Black and African American community, and also like took insurance, right? Just because you got to look at like the access to mental health, right? You know, it's hard to take insurance, right? And I understand why a lot of people don't. But the thing is like when you don't, you kind of just limit access to a lot. So I've been learning a lot about like insurance and like different things like that. But I definitely wanted to be at a place that did those things because I want to provide as much access as possible. And I am the only art therapist where I am. So it's also like, you know, educating my peers about like, hey, this is what art therapy is. This is how this works. This is how we can use it. And then a lot of people haven't even heard of it. So like, that's that thing too. Like that's the advocacy piece, you know, advocating, kind of just saying like, this is a service. This is a legit field. It's amazing. I love it. It's helpful, and you don't have to be a quote unquote artist to you know, receive art therapy services. You know, anything like a stick figure.
I was literally going to say a stick figure a second ago.
Like that's still art. So I like that part too. Like I like the fact that I get to kind of say, you know what, if you want to draw a stick figure, that's absolutely wonderful, and it's still art. You learn so much just based on, you know, how the person is creating their picture, what they depict, what they don't depict. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And I think it's a really great field that I can't wait for like more people like to learn about. But I also was thinking too, you know, there's not a lot of art therapists in Baltimore. There's not a lot of art therapists of color in Baltimore. And I'm just like, well, this is probably where I need to be. And this is where I want to be too. And I have my entire life to like change, you know, directions and things like that. But this is where I wanted to start.
So I have the African-American art therapist in Baltimore, the unicorn, if you will. All right. I see you out here.
Unicorn.
I did just call you a unicorn. And I could imagine like, you know, kind of the thing you touched on a second ago of like when a person's like, what they may draw, if they're drawing a stick figure there, what they may leave in, what they may take out, and so on. And I was just thinking, I don't know why, but like when I was younger, I used to draw like what I thought was a self-portrait of myself, and I would keep it in a book. And then I would look at like, all right, how has this changed over the years? Have I added more? Have I taken more out? I was like, well, that had cornrows in it. This does not. But other like just how I viewed myself is depicted in those attempts at self-portraits. And I was like, that's saying something. So at times when I was at a very like positive place, it wouldn't be as detailed. Mm-hmm. When I was at a kind of negative place, it would be very detailed. I was like, I'm overanalyzing myself a little bit. And that's just what I was thinking. And it's just interesting just hearing that described a little bit, just something as simple as you doodling, you can overanalyze it. Mm-hmm.
But it can also tell you a lot.
Yes. And then I think of that clip from Superbad when dude kept drawing penises on everything. So there you go. So let's see. Got a few more questions, and I'll give you a chance to shamelessly plug anything you may want to plug. So let's see. So you're not only are you like working in a practice and all, but you're actually doing your own thing outside of that. You have a store or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yes.
So you can plug that in a minute. But the question I have is, so you've seen composition and you're producing composition. What do you believe are key elements of creating good composition?
So you're talking technical.
You see that? You see that right there? I went with a hard question.
Yeah, because the thing is, I think if you would have asked me years ago when like I was going to Micah and I was like at Goucher, like literally focused on like the technical aspect of art and looking at portraits and things like that, I probably would have easily answered that question. But I think that now, because you're talking to the Chris that I would say that kind of evolved, and I kind of view art so much differently than I used to. I think a good composition is a composition that just reflects what the artist wanted to create and kind of just expresses how they're feeling. Art is really, it's so broad. Like it's not objective. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Like, you know, I mean, I really don't have that technical answer for you at this point.
No, I'm glad to hear it, because in doing this podcast is one of those things where sometimes I have to justify even doing it. Like, oh, why'd you have this person on there? Because I have a podcast. I don't know what to tell you, but I'll try to answer. And it's like, well, I think this person has an artful sensibility in what they're doing. Or even the notion of trying to justify a podcast as being an art, you know, like my approach to doing it is artistic. I'm not just sitting there. I like to talk crap and moving on. I try to ask thoughtful questions, and I try to have a pulse on what's going on. And by virtue of doing this pod and speaking with individuals such as yourself, it's just like, I think that this is an area in Baltimore that's not being covered to the degree that it should. Mm-hmm. That, you know, specifically what you do, but just more macroly speaking, artists and people that are effectively like driving the culture here, I think, that are making up what the culture is here. All right. So the last question that I have.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna give you. I got two more questions now because that response was weird. So the next to last question I have, the penultimate question, the Deathly Hallows Part 1 question that I have for you. What is your most unusual talent?
Oh, my most unusual talent.
Yeah, that's a curveball right there. Throwing it out to a few people.
Like unusual in the sense of like people wouldn't expect it, or unusual as in like that's not a talent.
Wouldn't expect it. Like, can you juggle?
No. I think. Okay, in all honesty, I think that my most unusual talent is me braiding. Like doing hair, and I'm gonna tell you why.
I'm looking at your hair, by the way, right now.
Oh, yeah, I didn't do this. One of my military friends did it for me. But the reason I say that, and I know like braiding hair is like a lot of people have that skill, but the reason I say that is probably one of my most unusual talents is because that is like partially how I got through school, like how I paid for school.
Oh, wow. Is
because like I was working and I was in school and my internships, and I was doing hair on the side faithfully to, you know, do whatever I can to get through school.
So did you come over there with like Mario Braid My Hair playing and
no,
I had to keep it as Baltimore as possible?
Because I think when people have a perception of me, like they think a certain way about me. I mean, you know, but I'm also pretty elusive. Like I'm pretty like
pretty elusive.
Okay, very elusive.
Okay, just making sure.
Since you want to call me out. But when I say that, it's just like when I say, oh yeah, like, oh no, I was doing hair. You do hair. Like that's always like, really? You? I don't know. I think that's why it's so unusual. Is like the kind of reactions that I get. And
I wouldn't have thought that. It was unusual to me. I didn't think it.
Really?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
All of my talent's unusual, so, you know.
I think hosting a podcast is an unusual talent.
I've been doing it for 12 years.
I mean, I know, but it's still unusual. Like,
oh no, I'm just saying I've been unusual for 12 years.
Oh, you've been unusual for 12 years. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Like, I mean, I think I'm an unusual person too, so it's okay.
So the last question I have for you Now, this is the ball buster question. This is the hard one. Yeah.
They were all hard.
Really? Were they?
Yes.
All right. So let's say we're outside of COVID, right? Where everything is kind of back to some degree of normal.
Okay.
People are breathing properly. Masks are deprecated. You have friends coming in from out of town and they're like, look, I'm going to be there in Baltimore for a 3-day weekend. Mm-hmm. What are 3 things that you tell them that they have to do? If they're coming to visit Baltimore, what are 3 things your out-of-town visitors have to do?
3 things my out-of-town visitors have to do.
It could be food related. It could be to check out this park, this gallery. It could be to buy art from you. It could be.
Yeah. Okay. The 3 things. Orioles game.
Gang.
Or Ravens, like either one, depending on the season. I think that. So that's one, because I'm not.
That's a wild broad budget though.
Yeah. But the Orioles tickets are more manageable. Like, okay, but I say Orioles or Ravens game, but if you want a budget, then definitely Orioles. I would say the museums, because I think Baltimore has amazing museums. Like, I'm always just in awe every time I go to the BMA or the Visionary Arts Museum. Oh man. And then the other thing, I really love the Inner Harbor. Like, I love everything that's down there. I know people have their little comments and their thoughts about Baltimore, but I love the Inner Harbor. And I just like everything that's down there. Like, I love the aquarium.
Yeah.
I haven't been to the aquarium in years. Like, that's actually something that I'm planning to do when COVID stops. Well, whenever it stops. But yeah, I think I always have a good time when I do those things.
Yeah. You can do that all in one swoop. You can go from Oreos to Inner Harbor and then hit up the A-Van right after Friends of the Network, hit them right after, and boom. Yeah,
but that was a hard question. Like, that's really hard because
I'm asking hard-hitting questions here.
Yeah, but because, like, despite what the world may know or perceive about Baltimore, like, it's a really amazing place. Like, I bought a house in Baltimore. Like,
I did too. Yeah.
Okay, so I know we have our stuff, but I love my city and the people in it.
Yeah, the people here are great and they're unique. And I think, like, one of the main goals of this podcast and kind of like what I've been doing over the last couple of years is in an effort to kind of help normalize it. I think that we're unique in our way that when you're from Baltimore, you're from Baltimore, you're from Baltimore. It's like, we're authentic. We're this, we have this gritty, weird, all of this different stuff, right? And then on the other side we have this street thing. We have these different neighborhoods that make up this melting pot that we have here. But then we're normalized. Like, we're similar to New Orleans. We're similar to a Philadelphia. And I think that this city being more than 60% Black, I think that Trump crap and things like that we're just used as a footnote. We're used as this place, this negative insert name place. Yeah. And really it kind of marginalizes and it really hurts the culture here. Like, people don't want to invest here. Like, I work in higher ed outside of this, and some of the responses I get, I don't think I'm going to come to Baltimore. It's dangerous, right? It's a little sketchy. Yeah. It's like, it's normal. It's like any place that you go is going to have, like, good and bad. If that's how you want to break it down like that, like, life's not black and white that way. But even like when you tell people, I live in Baltimore. I'm like, oh, but where are you from? And I'm like, oh no, I'm from Baltimore. I've had people say, no, you're not. Like, you don't have that accent, or like, you're not. You have all those kids and right. Yeah. These are things that people have said to me. And I just really think that that's just really unkind to say. Right. So you think that because I don't
dress or look or act or speak a certain way that I'm not from Baltimore. And I said, shame on you for not thinking that what a great city can cultivate a variety of people, and I can be one of those people. Because the city, it made me. I mean, yeah, my parents raised me, and I got educated in school, but I'm just like, I think that, where you come from, like, it shapes you. And I think that Baltimore shaped me in a great way. I think one of the reasons why I've been able to have so much empathy and patience and even understanding and not judge people is because I come from a place that is readily and wrongly judged. And I know that we're not all that, the media or the soon to be ex-president.
You getting evicted.
Yeah. Like, we're not that. We're not just a rodent filled city. We're not all these.
We're not the Wire.
We're not the Wire, we're so much more than that. And I think that that's the thing. By me recognizing that, I don't automatically judge people. People like, how do you so patient? Like, how are you kind to people? And I'm like, well, I came from a place where they prejudge us, and that's not a great feeling. So I don't do that to other people.
I dig it. So now in the last few moments, I want to thank you again for coming on the podcast. This has been great. Yeah, no, it has. You were great. So anything that you want to plug, website, anything that you want to plug, social media, anything. And again, thank you. And we'll wrap up from here. So feel free. I
am on Instagram. I think my business Instagram is Christlyn McCaskill Art. So it's like super long. So
it's a lot of letters.
It is. It's my first and last name, but art. I do have a website. As a matter of fact, I'm so easily to be Googled this day and age, which I don't like.
You're blowing up. It's what happens. Yeah,
like I think now, like when you Google me, like the first couple of pages are like legit about me and not just some random stuff. But
when people act like they don't know who you are, just say Google me and boom.
I actually say that. And people like, that's kind of rude. And I was like,
you might be a heel.
Right. But I have gotten to the point, like, I was like, oh no, it's okay. Like, you could just Google it. Like, what's your website or what's the store? And I was like, oh, if you just Google me, like, it'll come up. And like, and that's the most arrogant thing to ever say. But it's just like, no, but we use Google to Google symptoms and to Google places to eat or how to get somewhere, but you don't want to Google how to get to my website.
Wow, I like the energy there. So I'm glad that I'm glad that we're on a non-Rob, you should Google me kind of relationship here. I'm glad that we're friends here, because if I had to go in and Google you, I would be really tight. I'm like,
really?
Look, I was like, you're all Hollywood and shit now.
No, I mean it. You know me. I'm a pretty humble, like trying to stay out of the spotlight type of person. Because the reason I know that that you can easily Google me is because one of my friends, I
want to start typing right now.
Oh goodness. Okay. But one of my friends had sent me a screenshot of one of my of my Psychology Today profile, because he was Googling, like, that's
the first thing that pops up, and then your website.
Well, it was, but this was the therapist portion, but he found me. He was like, oh, look what I found. And I'm just like, oh, that already? I was expecting it to take some time. And then even somebody was like, oh, I found your website.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Less than half of a second, everything popped up. I just typed in the first name, and then the rest of everything else filled in.
Really?
Yeah, you're blowing up.
Stop it. I feel like you're being facetious.
No, I'm not. I think that I'm just small potatoes here. I'm just so honored for you to have come on my little podcast here.
No, I am honored that you thought that I was someone that fit what you were trying to do. And I appreciate you having me. I'm so sorry that you were able to Google me.
So again, I want to thank you for coming on, and that's going to be it. I'm going to wrap this up. So I'm Rob Lee for Christlyn McCaskill, art, all of that stuff, saying there's art in and around Baltimore. You just have to look for it.